So we're actually continuing the conversation. Angie had to part ways with us for another obligation, but I also wanted to jump into the conversation that we were having earlier about culture. I know that we talk about culture and the aspects of our identities and the aspects of how they shape us. But I also wanted to talk more about the actual practices and protocols. I think something that is heavy in the conversations that are being had in public about our communities is how Fa'afafine are taking up space in different avenues of Samoan culture outside of their expected roles as cultural practitioners, as those who beautify the culture. There are now talks about Fa'afafine um, in leadership roles, but also aspects that come with leadership. Um, Fa'afafine chiefs, Fa'afafine in government roles, Fa'afafine who have the malu. Um, do you have any thoughts on again the status quo of how our Fa'afafine are navigating and pushing the boundaries within our Samoan culture in today's society?
I think culture is a collective responsibility, right? And the culture should be informed and should be for all of the people that are within that culture. Um, I know that as a Samoan, I have seen the way that culture has evolved. The Samoan culture has evolved to be somewhat inclusive of Papafine, but I also know that there are practices where um, a lot of Samoans have been like absolutely not, right? And some of the ways that I have seen culture evolve is seeing a Papafine show up in their full feminine self in a pulitasi at a safa ingamatai if you hold a matai title. I have seen lots of families and villages acknowledge Papafine e Kaisua. Some of those responsibilities. Now, granted, that some of those responsibilities may have been performed by even male back in the days. But I also know that there are ongoing conversations that there's a lot of resistance against Papafini taking up certain spaces, and that includes the Malu, which was a very heated conversation. I would say last year. As a Papafini, I want to speak openly and honestly about this. I live my life um, as a woman, um, but I think there's balance that we always have to think of. Um, I have once entertained the conversation with my father about like jokingly. I said to my dad, said, "Wala wala kala umalu." And even though I would never do that without the blessing of my parents, because my parents are my first access to culture, and so I would always need that blessing. And even though I would never do that without their blessing, I wanted to just throw it out just to see the response, and so I did. And I told my dad, "Oo, wala kala umalu." And his response was, he said, "Awal faya may ububuyay laing." And so I knew that it wasn't supporting. Um, and that alone is enough to tell me that, like, what other reason do I have to get a model for if it's not going to be acknowledged by culture, which is what the model is for. Um, but also, there is a fine line between, and hopefully that you both can also touch on this. And this is just me taking off my advocacy hat and speaking as a Samoan and as a Papafini. There is a place where we had to sit down and look at ourselves as Fa'afafine, who we are as a people and who we are in our culture. And I'm not saying that we have to be limited by what people expect of us, but we also have to have um, our own sense of self-direction of like how do we navigate culture. Um, and I think there are times where I felt like, am I as a Fa'afafine trying to force myself into spaces that are not intended for me, trying to force into practices that are not um, supposed to be for me? Am I fully acknowledged as a Fa'afafine in my culture without having access to that? Like, do I need that to validate my Samoanness, my Fa'afafine identity? And so it's definitely a touchy subject. I have many times found myself going back and forth between the honesty. It's like, well, I live my life as a woman, and I serve my family as a woman. And when it comes down to understanding of culture and service, there are very many Fa'afafines who are worthy in that definition to receive a malu. But again, it always comes out to the question, should we get it just because we know that we are worthy of it? And so, yes, I found myself going back and forth in my own head, having conversations even with my own sisters, Fa'afafine sisters, on whether that is something that we should even push for. I do want to acknowledge, I do want to say this. I think the backlash from community is unwarranted because yes, there may have been a Fa'afafine here and there that has gone to get the model, but the backlash that we're receiving from community, they're acting like the whole Fa'afafine community is lining up to get malus tomorrow. And I think that is that just speaks to the ignorance of everyone else that's Fa'afafine and how quick they are to jump to put something over our heads and say, you're not supposed to go there. Um, when we ourselves may know that already.
Thank you, Tepa. I really appreciate that conversation. I think this is a long overdue conversation, especially for us who lives here in the States, and especially very much into preserving our cultures and value. And I think a lot of people, especially when all of that came out, everybody was looking at utopia. What is utopia? But I have to say, silent is gold. That I've always, because Tatu decide ili mo moleto falo loto, especially in this issue, because Bill Tatu Vava individualism. Walwa mi. Walwa toa mi. Ale ai mase to efisili. Le ai mase faapia. Ole aso mana. To like the conversation you have with mom and dad, right? Those are very important. But when it came to that, I also just wanted to do, but I have to sit back and really, really do a lot of soul searching, especially that part, ilitaua. So first thing to me, what I have to say and what I think of, o Samoa o uma ona tofi, o Samoa wa uma ona tofi. There is a place in our Samoan culture for everyone, including us as Fa'afafine. So I am so comfortable already of where we are at, but a lot of those spaces that you were saying, o tato foi, tato tito sieleva. We are the caretakers of the Va, especially all of us who have sisters, who have brothers, ai, o tato siblings, or brothers and sisters. How do we care for that Va and not having to take up all of their spaces, right? Yeah. So when it really comes to things pertaining to my sister, Oya Ola Uva Fiangaina, and I have to honor her in the most utmost important ways that I can to uplift my sister. You know what I mean? Because what we lo tofi. O tātou foi o whawhawhinge, because we hold so much of the culture, and I've seen it with our elders whawhawhinge, te o lātou wa angaia, o lātou wa whai maangai o ainga, I tuwhinga. And that is a very important role that they play now in the family dynamics of Samoans. They are playing such awesome roles, and I said, so what more, right? So wala fo uta to mala mai pesi. Le mafuanga na fe ausi mai ti le fai ngam ma, right? Dive in. Fine all of that. Ele mentioned my fine, but somewhere where it's still in there. You know what I mean? We are still in that history, and we are definitely making sure that we preserve all of that. O tato te whaiele whaangaluenga o le whaia, and but that is a wonderful position within our Samoan culture. We are uplifters. We lift up, especially Levata Puya, especially Litamasa, especially Tamaitai. Who does all of those works? We do. Right now, a lot of our whawhawhinga o lātua le watagulima e whala e tamaitai. We do a lot of stuff, and that is our va with our tamaitai, which they have given us the most important roles. Well, so we become very tapu in our own ways, within our own time. Cecilia Trile, they know. They don't know anything else now. Wa mai ata tole telo le oa ma le mala malama I tū manga whasamo, especially I le whapene, that we know where we are at. I tatu mala malama I tatu tūlanga. So for me, I was always trying to find ways to have a better conversation than being Pewa mai umala fo umamai fa pe fa finithio umetamalu.
Yeah,
No, we are not.
unnecessary.
It's very unnecessary, and I know a lot of people were just having a lot of those conversations. But for a lot of us, ua tatu mala malama ili tatu fasino manga. I completely understand my fasino manga. Ale wow. Ua tatu au. Maybe in 100 or 200 years from now, I want to vave, because how we got here is by the works of our other elders that came before us, right? If I faile mua, ol pusi lava masiona felao. It takes time. Ol fuata malelo, right? That a lot of people, langa foi me e tatu pa o le fia I loa mafape o a una mua. That is one of the pride falls of a lot of our fafafinas, when that is their main focus. Ai ua ngalo leava fatafata ma le anga nuu tu manga I tutunu o tatu atu fasamu. So let them deal with that. But for us, I fully support o tamaita I lava lona tufinga. Ao fala tu mai e te awa o ngā atu a kukuinga pa ura lo whatever the tiki,
Yeah. And I think this is so beautiful to have this conversation because this is the perspective on the Malu that I have yet to hear from more. Is from the feminine presencing Fa'afafine, who it actually pertains to, because you will never see a mass presencing Fa'afafine have a desire to go get a Malu. It's usually the ones that I've gotten a Malu are usually the ones that presents femininely. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that there are not a lot of Fa'afafine today that have the Malu shows that we have those conversations ourselves and that we are being mindful of culture. Otherwise, if we really believed what the accusations are that are coming against us, there would have been 100 of us already having malus.
But it was never our conversation because we already knew.
Yes.
And we've never had those conversations for the times we grew up, went out, come to this. We never had those conversations because it was never in our mind. Because watato malama lama, we already know our tufinga within our Samoan culture, right? Or malama lama, watato itato fasino manga. So we've never, but we've come now to a new era where lavale was sawa famaini or ilunga. Yeah, I would say you deal with it. You deal with it because you really have to understand because right? But we have to think that way. It's really not about when it comes to our Samoan culture, everything we do, it's a way oe, it's a way lutamama lutina, lo nu'umalo walala fanga. So those are the things we always do it in terms of having to think that any representation is never about us. We come from Samoa. You are a definite representation of your village and of your parents and of your clan. So it's a control mayay lalo le me
Yeah.
because they don't understand that, right?
And I think this brings to full circle what I was trying to talk about in the beginning of trying to navigate the identity of a Papafine and at the same time a trans woman, and the pressure to conform to Western expectations of what that identity should be. And I think it's so beautiful that we're having this conversation because really, if you're trying to navigate the Samoan culture as a trans woman, it's going to be very, very difficult because it's not our identity. Trans woman is not our identity. If you are navigating the Samoan culture from a Fa'afafines perspective, that's a different story. You come with a different understanding.
True.
That is our thing. Fa'afafine is our identity that we claim proudly. That is linked very much to the Samoan experience.
And I think those are a lot of the modern understanding. There's a lot of other issues. So we also talk about gay marriages. Those are all the things that are, but I think um, a lot of us, we are continuing to having time to process a lot of how to have the balance, right? Because we want to make sure too that there's always a seat available for every, especially within our Samoanness. But ayaw may loy mene mo malo magotsinga. Ya o me umana wo ye po. O umana fai po wa no umalala fanga. So ofela me you really have to think deep about that. Ye ilo lele. Awa if I fayalo wisu. Ya if I aileawi o because o umana fai po. Elufoai le. So those are the things that we really need to think about. Lango Samoa ua uma ona tofi. I cherish my fasinumanga, no matter be luma poitua, but I cherish it because I still have a place within my culture.
I think what Sipa mentioned about your original question about the navigating transness and fa'afafine, right? Let's start there. For me, they've always been in opposition. They've always been, because once I set foot in Samoa, my transness evaporates and I am fa'afafine, and vice versa when I come here. And it's very hard to, carry what I believe culturally and also what I present as here, but also what I do for work here, right? And so my hat as an advocate tells me that why shouldn't we get the malu? Because white people have gotten who do not deserve it, who know nothing of my ancestry, right? It's been commercialized by big conglomerates around the world to get money, profit. So that's what my nonprofit tells me, right? You should get it. It's bodily autonomy. And then when you take that hat off and you put on your cultural identity hat and you come into your own, you realize that if Fa'afafine is outside the binary, if Fa'afafine is its own entity, and we're saying that women, specifically cis women, are the ones who have been given that, then we need to be okay with us who have fully embraced Fa'afafine to say that that's not a space for me. That's a conversation. But also, as as a collective of Fa'afafine, we also need to learn how to protect our own who already have it, right? So the deal is done, right? We shouldn't demonize them anymore. How do we bring them into the fold and protect them from a world that says that we don't belong, right? As Fa'afine, we need to protect each other instead of saying, "Oh, she has it," right? Because that's what fuels the narrative of cis people online, always demonizing and villainizing Fa'afine for getting it, right? Coming back to the cultural stance, if Fa'afine are their own entity in the gender binary spectrum, what have you, then we need to have the conversation that we are okay, which is not a conversation that we have to have, but a conversation that we have to educate, specifically diasporic folks, queer folks, that it is okay that we don't invade those spaces. Ole malu fo'i, male lang yon malu fie. When you get it to Tau, whether Malu or so, I mean, it's a spiritual journey. As I mentioned before, it's not just getting marked the day of. Your family is involved. This is where the collective comes in. Your family is involved. There's a spiritual journey that one takes with your family as you get your markings. Now, as a Fa'afafine, being excluded from that, I want to have all of that, right? I want to have the full experience. Okay, if I'm going to say hotel.
Yeah.
I don't want to be, no, honest.
True.
If I'm being true to myself, I want the whole 9 yards, right? I want my mom and my grandma to be holding my hands while I'm getting my malu. I want my entire family extended to come with all the goods to give to the kufuma.
Yeah.
I want all of that. And I want the whole spiritual journey that we take, that women take on this journey, cis women take on this journey. And on top of that, when I'm in the Saufaing of the village, when we're in the division of the division of labor in the village, the certain groups of the village, which is Saufaing o Tamaitai, I want to be a part of that. Now, do you think, right, as whoever's watching, do you think that would ever happen for me as a trans woman or as a Fa'afafine? Most likely not. And hopefully, maybe 100 years from now, this video won't age well, right? That culture has evolved. But at this time, no. I will never get those privileges because I was never intended for those spaces as a Fa'afafine. And I have to be okay with it, right? Because if I'm really culturally inclined, I would know that that's not something for me, right? And me forcing my way in a hotel room to get it done by a machine and call it a malu, there's no honor in that, right? Because you could still serve your family without any markings.
Yes.
You could still serve your family without a title. You could still serve behind the veil. And that's another conversation that we have to have as a Fa'afafine family, is that we don't all have to be at the front of the table.
Amen.
We don't all have to be at the decision-making table. We're growing up in an era where everyone wants to be someone. And that's great. You can. We empower you to do that. But we also need to learn the value of servanthood, of being of service to people, because that's what our people are founded on. And it is okay if you hold power from behind the veil in serving.
Thank you so much, Arafaf Tyler, but that's wonderfully said, my two dears. I think one of the things I also just want to acknowledge our aunties and cousins, mothers who have supported us to be in the front in some of our Samoan culture. Because if it had been for those cis, fearless women's, we would have never be able to get into the front as well. Because I have to say, we were never allowed. You were never allowed to do those. Those were all the duties of Tamaitayunu. But you know what? I've gotten into two incidents where the Matais shut it down. You know, but I am so thankful for fearless aunties and families who are very strong in the Samoan culture. Say, ele ai se tofia le wavatu mato le fatanang alu oeta le sua. You know, and I've always have to say, some of them have passed on. God rest their soul. I thank them for seeing the value of the works that each one of us do and say, you are well, it's so deserving for you. It's that is an honor already. That is such an honor because right now we are seeing a lot of our Fafine Taisua, but some other villages are still, right? There's regulations of so and so, but slowly, Tato Faitawania Yale Mele Wayai.
I yell name manu
Yeah,
waulo.
I hear Neymar and just say thank you. That step by step, right? We're slowly being recognized into our Samoan culture in terms of the service. If I fail in lava, it's a service. Oleale le pule tautua.
Yeah.
And all of our look at where they are at now. Directors, Matai, Fafautua, business owners, because Eleyomayata Mamu Luma, they were all the way in the back, Fai Malia, Tuala Tungalwinga, and not having to boast about a lot of things. Nela na itato fafafi, avesele minita, le oleisu lava. But we must really understand the value of who we are. If I fail in mo fatamali wangalo umayata tul fatamali ay walo lava iwinga foyale fa pe o mi but it's a mi ay pa umay lalo isapo atwa. We're always here to catch you when you fall, but you must acknowledge your village sisters and everybody that is there to support you.
Yeah. And it's a journey, right?
Yes.
It's definitely a journey, even for us in our own heads, and finding ourselves leaning more towards this decision or leaning more towards this decision. Um, but I think it's important that we always keep ourselves balanced, like you mentioned, and understanding who we are, right?
And it doesn't hurt to ask, right? E yay for yan when we're in a collective way, facility. Just ask, olalaw, olasaw fautua. It's always something that we must try to encourage to have those conversations, so that way, yeah, ask your elders, ask your village families, ask your village sisters, because that's how we're able to try and help and prepare. Instead of, but we must continue. So, let's support what we have now, but we must have those conversations. We must encourage each one of our young Fafafinas to really seek into our culture. Not just our Samoan, but all of our other, but especially for our Samoans, dig, talk, Talanoa, Malamalama, fight out, research, right?
Yeah. I just want to say I love this conversation, but I do want to point out that this information that is being put out by us, like also as like a reminder to people who are quick to put to come at us when that just because we know who we are and our place in culture is not licensed for you to try and use that opportunity to exercise authority over our lives or feel like it's an opportunity for you to diminish the value and the femininity of Fafafine.
And that's why they must understand that just like all of us in representation of our family name in our village, they are also the representation of our community. Leala, so say Meala fight no matter how much you want to be me, so you really need to have me. I also mayatato.
Yes.
Lang wala vea fuang out sila family.
Balit sa olele, yeah. Ay li visa.
Thank you all so much for those amazing inputs and insights into the ever evolving and changing narrative on culture. We are all here today because of those who have paved the path ahead of us, whether they're here with us or not, and the obstacles that they overcame. the walls that they pushed down for us to walk forward. Um, is there anyone you'd like to name or talk to about that has influenced your life personally within our community, specifically Fafafine? Because I think in this conversation about how our community has grown and how we're navigating the spaces in which we have a birthright to, but also the spaces in which we are pushing the boundaries to be um, to have participation in. Is there anyone that you can think of that has helped you in your journey specifically?
Um, I have. I think if I don't name this person, I need to slap myself. I would have to name my dearly sister Siobhan. Um, Siobhan, oh my gosh. Me growing up here in the States, I was so American. I tell you, everything I was nothing Samoaness about me. Of course, there was that curiosity, but but when I met this beautiful Fafafine Siobhan, it taught me a lot about who I am, and I think everything that I've been sharing, it really contributes to who she was to me. She mentored me into a lot of this whole depth of this Samoa because I lived very freely. Hey, whatever push your heart, go for it. But I think one of the things I did was make a decision to move to Samoa because I felt like there was a hunger in me to really understand my identity as a Samoan and as a Fafafine. Meeting Siobhan has taught me a lot about the values of being a Fafafine, of being a Samoan, of understanding your gift, of who you are as a Fafafine. So I owe it all to her. A lot of these things that I've done, it was really from her that she had taught me a lot, mentored me through. She had to find her ways. She would do a lot of setups. She would set me up in so many ways that I'm like, oh my gosh, she never told. And I have to find it. You know, she's a very smart woman, Fafafine. I have to start thinking and utilizing. Siobhan just throws it at me and say, go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my. And those are the things that I really miss about her is because I did not know on the long run that she would journey beyond. And I am here like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. But I'm able to capture a lot of the things of who she was. Humble. Oh my gosh, she taught me a lot about that as well. Because I was very much up here. But I really reflect a lot about what this individual had done to my life. Ile mole meo le tautua, o le agamalu, o le afafatafata. She really did a lot of work on me. And I think it really, really, so whatever resonates from me, it's really from this individual who really polished me and just like, girl, get ready, you are going places, and that who is the person that I will continue on to acknowledge in everything that I do culturally is Siobhan Matai. I owe it all. And her legacy will continue on being part of mine in whatever that I do. So rest well, my love.
I can't choose one, to be honest, because I've been inspired by so many Fafafine. There's a specific generation that I saw and admired so much, not just because of the way they nurtured their relationship with other people, but even the way that they speak so eloquently in Samoan. And that's one of them is Seuli. Siobhan, of course, Athena Maunga, even
Yes,
Tapuma
yes.
Naya Don Babale, Tasha Letsio. There are so many that I have just like over the years being in community have come to really admire and look up to the way that they navigate their own culture and the Samoan language. And then, of course, like in my generation, Ara is always going to be one of my cultural mentors. And then there are also like individuals, like even here at work, like Francella. Francella was one of those individuals. Francella's younger than me. But when I would go to family fa'alavelave and cultural gatherings, Francella was one of those fa'afafine that the whole family knew to look to. That Francella would know exactly what to do. You put Francella at a certain role during a fa'alavelave, you knew that she knew what to do. You didn't need to explain to her or tell her what to do.
True.
She was also very quick with her tongue in Samoan language. And so, yeah, I think there are so many examples that I take from in having pride who I am as a Samoan and that I use as an example of how I strive to be a better, I guess, a better Samoan, better at my culture. Yeah.
I think I just thank you. I think I also might want to add Naya, Tasha Atio, who really also taught me a lot about genealogy. You know, it's a lot of cultural conversation. That girl, she is the one. She is the one. Yeah.
Talk about oral history.
Oh, oral history. Oh, Kenya
For
lavang
days.
nga ole oral history. Our dear Tasha. Thank you. Yeah.
Knowledge and history that I wish to see continue through generations of Afafine, that I hope it doesn't go away with a certain generation. I hope that it continues to be imparted to the next generation, continues to carry over.
And I think it's kind of difficult in a way because we're here in the States, not like in our village where after work done, we do our chores, then we walk to so and so.
By the radar.
But here, everybody's in place, and it's so hard to have our village connection. As you know, for all of us, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like we're caught up in about in trying to survive,
Yeah.
but not having time to always have these gatherings like how our elders used to do before. So those are some of the difficult times that we have as well.
Thank you. It's hard to just name one.
Yeah.
So, like Tepa has mentioned, a lot of our elders in Samoa, Siobhan Matai, of course, Seuli, also Naya Tashalatio, Mama Vena. I spent some time with Mama Vena. Tapunu'u, John Vale, Leatu Maunga, Cherie Ripley, Ipieli. These people had their own gift, cultural gift, specific cultural gift. Some were oratory, some had the gift of speaking, right? Some had the silver tongue, some had the gift of service. They taught me how to be of service to my family. By also mefai, and I hear them in the way I speak sometimes. It comes through me. I hear them in the behind my head. And in my own generation, like Tepa mentioned, there's so many that I can think of. Tepa Bigwan, Shani Masoli, Nani Uso, Nani Uso. These are girls in our generation that still live up to that caliber and that status of Fafine, on how to portray yourself in a way where you're not only representing yourself but your entire clan, right? Athena Mauma, how can I forget Athena? Athena, those are women, trans people, or Fafine rather, that have always been at the forefront for us in terms of visibility, and Seuli being one of them as well, like always being at the forefront, even during years where it wasn't so, appealing to be a trans presenting Fafafine. They were still at the forefront. And so today you see us waltzing in comfortably because of them. And so I will always honor them and always pay homage to them wherever I am. And I think that's something that we are lacking now, right? With the generation coming up, to really stop and give our elders their roses while they can smell them, right? And while they have that sense of getting it. And so for every elder that's ever, Marsha Mangeo, oh my gosh, Marsha Mangeo played such a very big role in my life as well, both academically and culturally. And all of them speak beyond the grave, even till today. Through me, through all Fafafine that are younger, and I say thank you, Faftayola Fasoa, Faftayola Towalolofa. And I thank you for that continuous work that you still do. You show up even now, right? And one person that I want to like really shout out in terms of the cultural context that we're talking about is my mama, Aumua Simanum Taitusi.
Yes.
That's who really empowered me as a Fafafine to be at the helm of like oratory and really research and do your alu me fight ko ay nga kay lo ay me ye fight. Pula makaw fight me ay. That's what mama would say. Awa ki makafakaw va or Fafafine, you can do it. Regard ile fight long tanga fele li everyone has importance and value that's underneath the sun. That's what Mama would tell us. And so, shout out to her for really empowering the cultural practitioner in me, because there were times, you feel like, I'm not worthy for this, but she really saw that in me. And so, rest in peace. We love you all. Thank you. And for those of you who are with us, we love you as well.
Thank you so much. I think to mention is also Dr. Venesile. Um, she had a great impact within a lot of our Fafafini, especially academia-wise, but also a lot of wonderful conversation and advice, a wonderful mentor. Um, yeah, Dr. Venesile, we really owe it all to Mama as well. I think also for myself in really prepping us in a lot of the things ahead in our journey. Um, and also, I think without a doubt, Sister Taffy, you know, it has been 15 years. 15 years of this journey with our beautiful utopia, in her resilient spirit of really, really providing space, her voice and her stamina and everything about her. It's such a wonderful inspiration for me as well, especially here in the state of Washington, to keep going. And we must also, I definitely have to acknowledge that as well. And to see a lot. I always, with me, because I work in a different organization, and when I see the flow of things here with all of these beautiful um, warriors that are here in Utopia, I really have to say that each of the things that they do really inspire me to keep going, because I have to deal with a lot with the cis community. Um, it also, as the visibility part is kind of like just keep going, right? But to see everybody's flow of work and the works that they do makes you continue the focus, because the fight is not over. It is not over. We read it every day. We turn on the TV. It's always about us every day. So each individuals here in our Utopia family continue to be that voice that makes me want to continue having my voice to speak on those issues. So, flowers to you all.
I just want to take the time to thank all of you again for all of your knowledge, sharing about your lived experiences, and your very important opinions and perspectives on not only culture but how we navigate our identities, and our just how we navigate our collective community. To close, I just want to say that it's important to have these conversations within our own communities and our own circles and spaces, but also to have these conversations, um, from what I've heard, from an aspect of being informed, or at least from an aspect of having an open conversation, less of the me, more of the we. How do we continue to perpetuate culture and have it thrive, exist, grow? Um, because it, you know, stagnancy is the death of culture. It's the death of anything that needs to
Yeah.
survive. And so while there are things that need to change and that will change over time, I think it's important that when we have conversations, much what you said, Tepa, I think folks, especially as a Samoan, what you say, what you do, whether in person to another person online, is a reflection of who you are as a Samoan, but is a reflection of your parents, your family, your village. So
And
how
your
do we
org.
do better to have these conversations in these spaces, but also online? Social media is not going to go away. Digital culture is not going to go away. And so, how do we take ourselves as Samoans, take our principles as a culture into these spaces to have these necessary conversations and commentary? Everyone's opinion is valid, but also those opinions should be informed. They should have more than just a gut reaction
Yeah.
to something that is that has deep meaning in our culture. Whether it is the Fafafinga who gets a mom, whether it is someone's opinion on what someone should or shouldn't do within cultural practice, or to push the boundary. I think it's a responsibility, and that is also it is also in servitude to culture that you, when opening your mouth, do all you can to have what's being said be from a place of love, of understanding, but also to push forward in a way that expands and doesn't put someone down or insult someone, or just to make yourself feel better. So thank you again for all of your time
Thank you.
and understanding and culture. Um, Talanoa is a series that happens monthly. These are conversations that we want to have, that need to be had, yes, in our space, but also to inspire others to have these informed and culturally driven conversations to perpetuate who we are as Indigenous people, but also how we navigate the modern world. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love Lava. Thank you.